I never thought I'd be the kind of girl who'd willingly walk into a swingers party. Let me rephrase that. I never thought I'd be the kind of girl who'd willingly admit to walking into a swingers party. But here we are. It started innocently enough, as these things often do. With wine, bad advice, and my best friend Karen, who has the persuasive power of a car salesman on commission. You're single, bored, and way too into those murder podcasts. Trust me, this is the cure, she declared one Friday night, waving a flyer like it was an invitation to a Michelin-starred tasting menu. The flyer was tacky, a pink silhouette of intertwined figures with the tagline, "Open minds, open hearts, open options." My instinct. Run. My reality. I needed a story worth telling at brunch. By Saturday, I was in Karen's car, wearing a black dress I hadn't taken out since my maybe I'll date again phase. My brain was ping-ponging between be adventurous and this is a terrible idea. Go home and watch true crime documentaries where the real danger is predictable. When we pulled up to the venue, a surprisingly tasteful, dimly lit suburban home, I took a deep breath. It's just a party, Karen said with an infuriating calmness. If it gets weird, we leave. She always made disaster sound like a planned activity. At the door, the hostess, a woman who looked like she could lead a yoga retreat in the Alps, greeted us warmly. "Welcome, ladies. First time." The way she said it, part genuine, part knowing, made me want to lie. But Karen, as Karen does, proudly announced, "Yes. Be gentle, she's new." Thanks for the subtlety, Karen. Inside, the vibe was interesting. Candles, soft jazz, and a buffet table that looked like it belonged at a wedding reception. Honestly, the spread was impressive. Charcuterie, mini quiches, and those little cucumber sandwiches. My nervousness momentarily gave way to a deep appreciation for catering. And then I saw them. Men. 6 of them to be exact, all standing near the makeshift bar. Each one looked like they'd been plucked from a Calvin Klein ad. Tall, confident, and radiating that elusive, I know how to hold a conversation and a power drill energy. Karen was already making a beeline for them. "Told you this would be fun," she whispered as she tugged me along. The drinks, I clutched my cocktail like a lifeline, trying not to spill it while one of the men, a tall, chiseled gentleman with a devastating smile, introduced himself. "First time here?" he asked. My brain went to mush, and before I could answer, Karen chimed in, "She's curious." Curious. That's the word. Not scared, not awkward, not totally rethinking her life choices. Curious. I could work with that. As the night went on, I realized something odd. The whole setup felt surprisingly normal. People were chatting about books, travel, and which wine paired best with brie. It was less 50 Shades and more book club, but make it spicy. The curveball, just as I started to relax, Karen leaned over and whispered, "Did you notice there's an odd man-to-woman ratio?" I hadn't, but now I couldn't unsee it. 6 men. 2 women. "It's a themed night," Karen said, barely containing her laughter. "What theme?" "Noah's Ark for singles." Hissed back. Before she could answer, one of the guys, let's call him Mr. Confident, clapped his hands lightly to get everyone's attention. "Ladies, gentlemen, let's get comfortable," he announced. The room shifted, the energy changed, and suddenly it hit me. This wasn't a mingle and maybe flirt party. This was more. Karen nudged me. "Don't chicken out now," she whispered, her eyes gleaming. Chicken out. I was never in. I hissed, but it was too late. Everyone had gathered, forming a circle of sorts, and before I knew it, I was in the eye of the storm. 6 sets of eyes on me and Karen, the only 2 women in the room. Reflection as the evening unfolded, details for the next part promise. I realized 2 things. 1, curiosity really does kill the cat, or at the very least, puts it in very uncomfortable situations. And 2, never underestimate the power of a good buffet to distract you from life choices. Alright, here's the thing, they don't tell you what to do at these things. There's no guidebook or swinger parties for dummies. You're supposed to just know. Spoiler alert, I did not know. So there we were. Karen beaming like she was the queen of the swingers' prom, and me clutching my drink like it was the Holy Grail. I kept my eyes on the buffet table like it held the answers to the universe. If I just focused on the cheese platter, maybe I could pretend I wasn't standing in the center of what was quickly becoming a very intimate gathering. The energy in the room was shifting. There was no denying it. The light banter from earlier had given way to something more deliberate. People weren't just talking anymore, they were assessing. And not in a creepy way. More like they were all sizing up the vibes, seeing who was on the same wavelength. I glanced at Karen, who was already deep in conversation with Mr. Confident. He was leaning in close, his smile dripping with charm. Karen, of course, was eating it up, her laugh a little too loud, her body language practically screaming. Yes, I am having the time of my life, thank you very much. Me. I was doing my best impression of a houseplant. Silent, decorative, and totally out of place. A warm welcome. Just when I thought I could fade into the wallpaper, another man approached me. He was tall, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor, the sort of guy you'd trust to fix your sink or babysit your dog. You look a little overwhelmed, he said, his voice low and soothing. Oh, I'm fine, I lied, clutching my drink so tightly I was surprised the glass didn't shatter. He smiled knowingly. First time. Is it that obvious? Not at all, he said smoothly. You just have that I'm deciding whether to run or stay look. I've seen it before. His honesty was disarming. For the first time all night I felt myself relax. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Maybe I could just enjoy the atmosphere without getting too involved. A shift. And then it happened. The music changed. Gone was the soft jazz, replaced by something slower, heavier, with a deeper bass line that seemed to pulse through the room. The lights dimmed even further, casting everything in a warm, golden glow. Conversations hushed, and a quiet anticipation filled the air. I felt a light touch on my elbow and turned to find Karen. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, or maybe it was mischief. Time to join the fun, she whispered. Fun? I squeaked. What does that mean exactly? She grinned and leaned in close. Just go with it. Trust me. Trust her. The woman who once convinced me to dye my hair purple in college. The woman who thought a road trip with no GPS was a fun adventure. But before I could protest, she was already being led to a plush corner of the room by Mr. Confident, leaving me alone. The circle. I turned back to find that people were starting to gather again, forming loose groups. The air buzzed with a kind of nervous energy that was both thrilling and terrifying. And then, as if on cue, the man with the kind eyes appeared at my side again. You don't have to do anything you're uncomfortable with, he said gently, as if reading my mind. But if you're open to it, this could be interesting. Define interesting, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He chuckled. You'll see. Before I could overthink it, he extended a hand. Against my better judgment, or maybe because of it, I took it. He led me to a small group that had formed in one of the more dimly lit corners. The seating arrangement was casual, almost lazy, with people draped across chairs and cushions like they were part of a bohemian magazine spread. I sat down cautiously, hyper-aware of every movement, every glance. The attention. Here's the thing about being new to something like this. You attract attention. People can sense it like sharks smelling blood in the water. I could feel their eyes on me, not in a predatory way, but in a way that said, ah, fresh meat. It was intoxicating in a way. The attention was a rush, like stepping into the spotlight for the first time. I felt exposed, but not in a bad way. It was exhilarating, this mix of fear and excitement, like standing at the edge of a cliff about to jump. The conversations around me were light at first. Travel stories, jokes, even a heated debate about the best kind of wine to pair with chocolate. But slowly, subtly, the topics shifted. Compliments became bolder. Laughter became softer. The space between people began to shrink. And then the first touch. It was fleeting, a light brush of fingers against my arm as someone reached for their drink. But it sent a jolt through me, a spark that made my breath hitch. I looked up to find the culprits smiling at me, their gaze steady and warm. Sorry, they murmured. though the look in their eyes said they weren't sorry at all. The moment, time seemed to slow. Every sound, every movement felt amplified. The clink of glasses, the rustle of fabric, the soft murmur of voices. The air was thick with unspoken questions, unspoken possibilities. And then Karen's voice broke through the haze. "Having fun yet?" I turned to see her sprawled across a chaise lounge, looking as comfortable as a cat in a sunbeam. "Define fun," I muttered, earning a laugh from the kind-eyed man beside me. Karen just grinned. "You're welcome." Reflection. As the night wore on, I realized something important. Sometimes the scariest experiences are the ones that make you feel the most alive. I was still nervous, still unsure of what I was doing or why I was there. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't overthinking. I was just there. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Let me preface this by saying I love my parents. Really do. But sometimes, they have a way of turning the simplest moments into full-blown soap operas. So when they came to visit me last month, I was ready for the usual routine. Nostalgic stories, unsolicited advice, and a barrage of questions about why I'm still single. I was not ready for what actually happened. It started innocently enough. They arrived, arms full of groceries, because apparently I look malnourished to them. And my dad immediately commandeered the living room to set up his laptop and fix my Wi-Fi. Meanwhile, my mom fluttered around the kitchen, criticizing my lack of proper Tupperware like it was a federal crime. At some point they stumbled upon my old photo albums. Yes, actual printed photos from when people still believed in developing film. "Oh, honey," my mom exclaimed, pulling out a dusty album from the bottom shelf. "Let's take a walk down memory lane." I groaned. "Do we have to?" But you don't argue with a woman armed with a scrapbook. The discovery. It was all going fine at first. Pictures of my high school prom, my ill-advised goth phase, and a particularly regrettable haircut from college. We laughed, we cringed, we bonded. And then, they found it. "What's this one?" my dad asked, holding up a photo that instantly made my stomach drop. You know that feeling when you realize you've made a terrible mistake, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. That was me in that moment. The photo was from one of my earlier swing parties. Not risque per se, but definitely suggestive. It was me, Karen, and a group of very attractive strangers, all dressed a little too fancy for a casual get-together. The lighting was dim, the smiles were a little too knowing, and the vibe, let's just say it screamed, "This isn't your typical book club." "Oh, that," I said, my voice pitching up an octave. "Just, a party I went to once." My dad squinted at the photo like he was trying to decipher an ancient code. "Looks like a fancy party. What kind of party was it?" "Just a social thing," I mumbled, trying to snatch the photo from his hands. But my mom was faster. She peered at it, her eyebrows shooting up. "Is this one of those swinger parties I read about in my book club?" Froze. Well, what are you talking about?" "Don't play coy with me, young lady," she said, smirking in that way that made me want to dig a hole and climb in. The interrogation. And then it began, the relentless questioning. "How many of these parties have you been to? Do they play music? Like, is it a dance party? Were there activities?" I wanted to die. Right there on the spot. "It's not what you think," I stammered. "It's just a casual thing. People hanging out, talking, having fun." But my parents were like bloodhounds on a scent. "So it is a swinger party," my mom declared, her voice somewhere between shock and glee. I buried my face in my hands. "Can we just move on to the next photo, please?" But no. Course not. Because my dad, ever the pragmatist, decided to drop the biggest bombshell of all. "Well," he said, clearing his throat, "if it's so casual and fun, maybe we should come to the next one." I stared at him, my brain short-circuiting. "Excuse me." "You heard me," he said, completely serious. "We've been looking for new ways to spice things up. This sounds like an adventure." My soul left my body. There are moments in life where you have to pause and reevaluate everything. This was one of those moments. My parents, My sweet suburban parents who still think adult movies mean R-rated dramas, wanted to come to a swing party. Absolutely not, I blurted out. But my mom was already on a roll. Oh, come on, honey. Don't be selfish. It could be fun. Fun. Choke. Mom, this isn't bingo night. She waved me off. We're adults. We know what we're doing. Do you, though? Yes, she said, with the confidence of someone who once got lost in a mall parking lot for 3 hours. The reluctant invitation. After an hour of relentless badgering, I caved. I agreed to let them come, on one condition. They had to promise to behave. No awkward questions, no embarrassing comments, and absolutely no trying to play matchmaker. They swore they'd be on their best behavior. Spoiler alert, they were not. Reflection. As I sat there, staring at the now empty photo album, I realized 2 things. 1, I needed to invest in a lockbox for my personal belongings. And 2, I had just made a terrible, terrible mistake. But hey, what's life without a little chaos, right? Fast forward to the night of the party. My parents were dressed to the nines. My dad was wearing a blazer he hadn't pulled out since their 25th wedding anniversary. And my mom had on a sequin top that screamed, "I'm here for a good time, not a long time." You guys look, I hesitated, trying to find the right words. Festive. My mom beamed. Thank you, dear. It's important to make a good impression. My stomach churned. This was happening. This was really happening. Arrival at the party. The house was as I remembered. Dimly lit, softly buzzing with conversation and low music. But this time the stakes felt higher. I wasn't just navigating the awkwardness of a swinger party. I was doing it with my parents. As soon as we walked in, Karen spotted us. She froze, her drink halfway to her lips. "Oh my God," she mouthed, her eyes darting between me and my parents. "Don't ask," I muttered, dragging them toward the buffet table. "Wow, look at this spread," my dad said, loading up a plate with bruschetta like he was at a company picnic. "Is that brie?" my mom added excitedly. "I love brie." I was already regretting every decision that had led me to this point. The fun begins. The night started off relatively tame, just mingling and chatting. My parents seemed to fit in disturbingly well. My mom was laughing with a group of women like they were old friends, while my dad bonded with a guy over their shared love of classic cars. For a brief, fleeting moment, I thought, maybe this won't be a complete disaster. And then it happened. The energy in the room shifted. Conversations quieted, and people began pairing off or forming small groups. The air grew heavier, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. My mom leaned over, her voice low. "So, when does the fun start?" I choked on my drink. "Mom, I'm just asking," she said, feigning innocence. "Maybe don't use the word fun," I hissed. The moment of truth. Before I could wrangle her back to the safety of the snack table, my mom and dad were approached by a couple who clearly knew their way around a party like this. They exchanged pleasantries, and then the couple extended an invitation. "Would you like to join us?" the woman asked, her tone polite but suggestive. My parents exchanged a look. "Why not?" my dad said, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. The aftermath. I don't know how I survived the next hour. I tried to distract myself by chatting with Karen, who was having the time of her life watching the whole debacle unfold. "I can't believe you brought them here," she whispered, barely containing her laughter. "Do you think I had a choice?" Shot back. But my humiliation hit its peak when I heard my mom's voice echo from across the room. "You're doing it wrong," she exclaimed. Karen spit out her drink. Froze. "Mom!" I hissed, rushing over to her. She waved me off. "Oh, don't be such a prude, dear. Your father and I are just learning the ropes." I turned to my dad, who looked completely unfazed. "It's harder than it looks," he said with a shrug. I wanted to scream, cry, and laugh all at the same time. Instead, I grabbed a glass of wine and downed it in one gulp. The ride home. When the night finally ended, I practically dragged my parents out the door. In the car they were glowing, positively glowing. "That was an experience," my mom said, her voice filled with awe. It was fun, my dad added. We should do it again sometime. I whipped around in my seat. Oh, absolutely not. Never again. My mom just smiled knowingly. We'll see. Reflection. As I collapsed into bed that night, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Sure, it was mortifying. Sure, it's a story I'll never live down. But deep down I knew one thing. My parents might be the most embarrassing people I know, but they're also the most adventurous. Still, I think it's safe to say that's the last time I'm taking them to a swing party.